So this is part 3 of the videos that I'm making. Again, based on what's happening to me, and has been happening to me all my life, and then the more recent accusations of historical sexual abuse against my sisters, which is completely false. And there's absolutely no truth to it, and it's just a continuation of the abuse that I've received all my life from those that I call my family. Um, so, and where we left off, my younger sister had been staying with me. My younger stepsister had been, oh sorry, half sister had been staying with me for a few years. She, fed her, looked after her, clothed her. She's a loved part of my family. Came on holidays with us, Christmas dinners with the in-laws, part family, but her behaviour at times was odd, and my wife was picking up on certain forms of behaviour that she couldn't tolerate, and that was the kind of like physical and mental abuse of my youngest child, my youngest son. And I really never saw it. I just wasn't around when that was happening. So I couldn't believe it. Um, and I fought for my sister's corner. I was like, no, she couldn't do things like that. That can't be true. And it almost drove a wedge between me and my wife until eventually I thought, hold on. I need to go and speak to my stepfather and get him to actually put his hand in his pocket, because he had money, owned his own house, had money, and he could help my sister, who's an adult now. We'd got her. She did have anxiety issues. She did have mental health problems, but I'd helped her get on a course at the local football club. It's an anxiety course. I'd take her every morning. I'd pick her up afterwards so she didn't have to travel on her own anywhere. And that seemed to have positive effects on her well-being. I truly love my sisters and my brother. Yeah, I think the psychological abuse that is going to happen to me again, I'm not privy to all the things that have been said about me in these disgraceful allegations. It's just mind-boggling how it can still continue when I'm 49 years old. How can I still be being abused by my family? Not just my stepfather, now my family, when I'm 49 years old, after all I've tried to do to be the best brother I can be. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that I could never. I've gone on to come to terms with the fact that I put myself in situations where they could abuse me. My need to have a family, my need to have connection. Whilst I don't thoroughly understand it psychologically, I understand that it is psychological, and we all need to feel like we belong somewhere. So, going back to the younger sister living with us, so there came a point where it was untenable. Something had to happen. So, my younger brother was living in what they call trying to remember what it's called. It was like a hostel type place in town where you could get your own room. You pay that the housing benefit would pay the rent, and you get they feed you as well for that. I think once a day. I can't quite remember for that. And we tried to get her into there because it was untenable now. We couldn't have her. My wife couldn't have her. It was going to break us up. My wife was going to leave. and take our sons with us. And I was like, well, obviously something is going on then if it's getting this serious. So I had to deal with it. I had to deal with it. And to deal with it, I had to remove my sister. It wasn't an easy for me to do. Remove my sister from my home after more than 2 years. Um, and my brother wouldn't allow one of the places rule where we were trying to get her in, where my brother was living. One of their rules was if someone who was already living there was against a certain person moving in, then they couldn't move in, and that's what happened in this situation, which ultimately led to me turning to my father and saying, "Look, you can't." Sorry, my stepfather, you can't brush it under the carpet anymore and palm your responsibilities to your daughter off on everybody else. You abandoned her at a certain age. You left her to live in cat feces, cold house, no electricity, so on and so forth. It's now your turn to look after. And he eventually did. He put his hand in his pocket, got her into a flat, um, and she got a job. I remember me saying that I helped her get onto like a confidence building course at a local football club back in the, say, 2004, 5 or 6. Um, and that actually had some positive effects on her. And she was able to move into, she had no real choice but to move into this flat. She met some people there. So she was house sharing. She had a room. We'd go and visit her. Um, I'd take she never had a good relationship with my eldest son. I never understood why. Um, but my youngest son, even though there were issues going on around his and her relationship and things that might have been going on at the time, um, I would take him with me to see her. I wouldn't leave them alone together, but I'd take them, spend time with them together. And then there was a few years where we kind of lost touch a little bit. We couldn't get hold of her. She changed her phone number, so 2 or 3 years maybe. And then fast forward to her getting married. We went to the wedding. Um, helped drive the bride, my sister, the bride, and her groom, her husband, back to the wedding venue. I remember at the party after the wedding, um, in the day before the night's do. So the wedding was early in the day. Um, then there was a party at the stepfather's house at that time, in Sandbach. Um, they'd left some items at the wedding venue, so we had to go back and get like these bottles of booze and things like that, and took them to the house so my sister could change and so on, and then went back to the wedding after party. Um, she then had her first child. She'd visit my house with her first child. Everything was really good. The relationship was fine. I mean, we weren't having lots and lots to do with each other, but video footage and pictures, family pictures of her with a child, my sons with her children. She had a second son. Um, we were there and helped look after the eldest son, and look after their house. Christmas Day dinners together. So we'd go there. My family would go to her family's house at Christmas, have a good time together, take photographs and video, birthday parties, and so on. And me and my wife even began to socialise with them. So when they had babysitters, my children at this time were kind of like my oldest son was old enough to look after my youngest son. If we went out, we started to go out, or if we were going out, so to the pub, let's say, or for a meal, my eldest son would look after um, my youngest son, and my wife's um, husband's auntie would look after her children, or my sister's children, or child, if it was during the period where they only had the one child. And everything was great. Everything was absolutely great until 2012. And in 2012, during so someone's come into the room. In 2012, on the night of the opening ceremony of the Olympics, my wife, and my youngest son. My eldest son would never go. He couldn't. He just didn't trust my youngest sister, and he would have nothing to do with her, which I always found difficult. But I would only press him to have things to do with her at Christmas. So he would attend Christmas family, dinners and things like that, and appear in photographs and video and so on. But anyway, 2012, the night of the Olympics, I take my family, my youngest son and my wife. We go to their house. Me and her husband leave and go to a local Morrison's to buy some alcohol and food and drink. We get back, and there'd been words had been said. My sister was concerned about her eldest son, and about the fact that I think he was maybe 4. I can't quite remember how old he was at the time, but maybe under 5, under 5 years old. And she was concerned that he was homosexual. And my wife said, "Well, what makes you think that? How would he even know? He doesn't know what one is. Maybe you shouldn't be talking about things like this." And obviously, I wasn't present during this conversation, so I don't know the ins and outs. All I've got is the third hand, the kind of, or second hand information about this. And that led to my wife suggesting, that if my sister was suggesting that her son had mental health issues, that maybe that kind of semi ran in the family, because my sister herself had mental health issues. And so had my mother's youngest brother, and my mother's youngest sister had mental health issues, which my sister took offence to. So that led to a rift opening up between my wife and my sister. My wife stopped visiting. That then meant that my youngest son stopped visiting, and I tried to push on and repair the damage, make them see eye to eye that it was just a conversation they maybe just didn't agree on, and they could put aside, because people don't have to agree on everything in life. And that's the way I see it. You can't all be on the same page about everything. And maybe it was just something that wasn't worth destroying the family over. But we can fast forward a year, maybe 2. And on my wife's birthday one year, so her birthday's in January, not long, just after the new year, a birthday card, we got a card through the post. We open it, and it's full of a message, like a couple of paragraphs of a message, supposedly from someone, a man, suggesting that how he had great sex with my wife the other day, and how much he loves her, and how much he loves sucking on her nipples, and doing all sorts of sexual things together, and how their love will always be strong, and calling her a pussycat. my pussycat and all this kind of thing. And obviously, at first, I thought, oh, could this be true? Could this be real? Could this be real? But my wife has her own battles, demons with mental health. And at this point, she was suffering from agoraphobia, so she was afraid to leave the house. She hadn't left the house in probably months, if not a year or more at the time. And it's hard to be completely accurate at this point, so going back in time. So it's 2020, it's September 2023, first, and I'm talking about events going back to 2014. So this card come, we were horrified by it. Actually, I hid it. I didn't show her. Then Valentine's Day, so January, her birthday, then Valentine's Day, another card comes. Basically the same sort of stuff. Graphic, again, sexually graphic. Making out that she's having an affair with somebody, talking about family events, mentioning like things that had happened in the family that maybe someone. So make it out. Obviously, it was someone we knew who was sending these cards to us. And this time I had to tell my wife, and I showed her the cards, and obviously it sent her into a kind of a bit more of a spiral of depression because she wasn't sure whether it was I believed these things. But obviously I knew that she wasn't leaving the house. I knew how poorly she was. Being a carer for her, I'd been a carer for her since 2002-3 when she developed epilepsy, which then led on to insomnia, which then led on to bipolar disorder, and everything else in between. I mean, she's been ill for years, and now she was under attack by whoever it was. We just didn't know. And these cards continued to come throughout 2014, 15, and 16. And we went to the police. The police took one or two of the cards from us. Did a forensic analysis and determined that whilst there was DNA on the cards, it was DNA of evidence from somebody they knew wasn't known to them. So they said our only option was to ask everybody, whether they would be willing to give DNA evidence. And at the time, we were a bit horrified by that. And we thought there's no way we can go to, her sister, my half brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts, blah blah blah, friends. The list would have been endless of people we'd have asked to have been asked. We would have to have asked, and we decided not to do it. But the cards did continue to come. So we went back to the police a second time, probably a year later. And this time it was a different officer because the person that was conducting the investigation the first time around, she was pregnant the first time and she'd gone off on actual leave. And this time there was no doubts about it. They just weren't interested. They were well, just throw them in the bin. Basically, stop being scaredy cats. Basically, just put up with it. Go away. We tried to protest, but I mean, we were told that if we protested, then we'd be in trouble. So came away from that, and I had to, find out. I had to find out who was sending these cards. So I decided to conduct an investigation of my own. So this is what I came up with. I came up with the thing I would tell my in-laws something that I would not tell anyone else. I would tell all my friends something individually. So everybody I knew, I would tell something about something, whether it was true, whether it was false. I would tell them something. So we were going here, we were doing this, we were doing that. Something in line might fall within those cards, the kind of things that were already appearing in those cards. So that also led me to tell my younger sister that I was going on holiday. I was going on holiday with my sons, with the boys, I would say, and that my wife wouldn't be coming with me. Well, it didn't take long. It didn't take long. A card, in fact, two cards appeared through the door. One of them mentioned the specific thing that I told my sister, and obviously I was horrified. And I tried to conceal it from my wife. I'm not proud of that, but I did. I tried to conceal that from my wife, but in the end, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I had to tell her, and that my sister, our own sister, my own sister, this person who had been telling us how much she loved us, how much she loved us being part of her family, and we loved her being part of our family, and how I was consistently trying to repair the damage that had been caused by that little feud I mentioned, was sending us these disgusting cards, attacking someone who was already unwell. Now, rather than go to the police, instead I chose, and this is the mistake I made, this is what it's leading up to these allegations of the historic sexual abuse. I chose to challenge her directly. Massive mistake. Biggest mistake I've could potentially be the defining mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, because I could ultimately go to prison or be convicted of something I've not done. And it's all because I should have gone to the police. Instead, I didn't. I went to her because I don't know, maybe it's some kind of internal misguided feeling that I could still repair that damage. I didn't realize that the hatred, and I pushed and I pushed and I told her that, I discovered it's her. I only told you this piece of information. This piece of information appeared in the card. If it's not you that's sending it, who did you tell that piece of information to? Who's sending these cards? And she always denied it, always denied it, always denied it until one night in September 2017. So nearly 6 years ago. Yeah, nearly 6 years ago. She turned round to me and accused me. This was her revenge. She turned round to me, and instead of admitting that what she'd done, she turned round to me and accused me of fondling her son's testicles, her eldest son's testicles. Like that, she said. And she was drunk while she was saying this. Obviously, gobsmacked, I shouted at her husband. Her husband come in. I said, "Have you heard this?" I said, "Go on, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it." And she repeated it. And her husband looked at me, shaking his head, mouthing, I've never heard any of this. And I said, "You do realise what this means, don't you?" I says, my head was spinning at the time. I couldn't believe it. I was in so much shock. I said, "This means that I can no longer have anything to do with your sons. It means I can't be their uncle anymore." And what was even more shocking was she said, "Well, don't do that." Well, I can't remember word for word, but she basically said that that wouldn't be fair on her other son, on them, that I should continue to be their uncle based on the. And I thought, well, how can I be? You just said what you've said. And I got my coat and left. And Up until this day now, 1st of September 2023, I haven't seen her. I literally left that house and had nothing to do with her since. Nothing to do with her since.